แบบน้องเรียนมาครบคอร์สมันต้องระดับนี้มันต้องปึกแล้วอือฮึระหว่างรอน้องอาร์ตนะครับผมเดี๋ยวพี่จะพาไปดูอีกคลาสหนึ่งมีคลาสพี่มายสอน IELTS อยู่ลองฟังคลาสนี้หน่อยเป็นไงบ้าง
provide doctors ก็คือเหมือนแบบให้ resource กับหมออะไรเงี้ย
provide แปลว่าให้ใช่ไหม
ใช่ให้แต่ในที่นี้มันไม่ได้แปลว่า
คลาสเรา
เห
ก็
มือน
จะ
เราให้หม
ไล
อ
ฟ์
กับใครนะแต่หมายความว่าให้เนี่ย with the
อัน
resource
นี้
เนี่ยให้ด็อกเตอร์
เนี่ยคลาสนี้ก็สอนสดออนไลน์
spend time
สอนสดออนไลน์อันนี้นะฮะก็คือเนี่ยอันนี้สอนน้องเซนไปเชียงใหม่นะครับเพราะฉะนั้นตรงนี้เนี่ยคลาสของเราเนี่ยเรามี capacity ในการเรียนรู้เนี่ยไม่ว่าจะอยู่ที่ไหนในโลกเนี่ยก็สามารถเรียนนะครับเหมือนในห้องเรียนได้เลย virtual classroom ตรงนี้โอเคอันนี้เรียนเรื่อง grammar กับเรื่อง IELTS อยู่
ใช้เงินประมาณ100 ปอนด์ต่อเดือนกับ transport ก็คือการเดินทางเห็นไหม spend แล้วก็เขียนคำว่า spend เท่าไหร่แล้วก็มา on อะไรหรือ spend เนี่ยบางครั้ง
ตรงนี้เนี่ยก็คือเราสามารถ
เราอาจจะใช้เป็น noun อย่างเงี้ยก็เป็น spending
ก่อนหน้า
on
นี้
ก็
จะ
ได้
เป็น language of medicine
การใช้จ่ายกับ
นักเรียนแพทย์เนี่ยต้องเรียนภาษาอังกฤษอันนี้ก็คือจะเป็น grammar ที่เกี่ยวข้องกับ IELTS โดยตรงเพราะฉะนั้นตรงนี้
ห
เนี่
รื
ย
อเราอาจ
virtual
จะใช้
classroom เนี่ยจะเหมือนห้อง
expenditure
เรียนจ
on
ริงๆเลยซึ่ง
คำว่า expenditure แปลว่าค่าใช้จ่าย
วิดีโอค
เป็
อน ล
noun
ไก
เหมือนกัน
ด์ให้ไม่ได้บอกได้เลยเพราะฉะนั้นตรง
แปล
นี้เนี่ย
ว่า
เราจะเรียนนะครับ
ค่าใช้จ่าย
ไปวัดในเรื่องของ international
เหมือนกับ
exam ต่าง
expense อะไรพ
ๆและ
วก
แน่
เนี้ย
นอนเราก็จะมี general
ความหมาย
English
เดียว
แล้วก็
กัน
conversational English เนาะโอเคเดี๋ยวเรากลับมาดูคลาสของเราเอง
ทีนี้มาดูคำต่อมา
โอเคครับอาร์ตพร้อมยังเอ่ยเมื่อกี้พี่แวบไปดูคลาส IELTS อีกคลาสหนึ่ง
พร้อมแล้วครับ
พร้อมนะไงเรามาอ่านกันนะครับตรงนี้ น้องเสร็จคอร์สแล้วเราจะมาทำเหมือนกับ exit exam ในเรื่องของ reading ที่เป็น advanced ก็คือแน่นอนนะครับเป็น research paper ที่มีความยาวประมาณ3หน้าขึ้นอยู่แล้วนะฮะแล้วก็เราต้องอ่านทำความเข้าใจกับมันและสามารถตอบโจทย์ได้โอเคไหม
โอเคครับ
มาเริ่มเลยนะครับผม methods population and study design. Our study was undertaken in Eshkvirk, an industrial city on the western side of Ural Mountains in Russia. It's a typical Russian city of its size, population 632,000 at the 2002 All-Russia census, with average life expectancies of Russia and a distribution of death by cause in working age men that is much the same as that for Russia overall. Cases were deceased men aged 25 to 54 years who had died from any cause from October 20th, 2003 to October 3rd, 2005 and had lived in household in Eshwick with at least one other person. Deaths were notified by the Registrar of Deaths. Cause of death was coded by the certifying doctor of the pathologist using the 10th revision of the International Classification of Disease. Controls were live men selected from a 2002 population register. Every month, new controls were randomly selected from within 5-year age band from the sampling frame, such that the control sample with proxy interviews was the same age as the accumulating series of cases with proxy interviews. A team of 34 trained interviewers used a structured questionnaire to obtain information about cases and controls from proxy respondents living in the same household. Nearly all case proxy interviews took place 6 to 8 weeks after death. Proxy interviews were done between December 12, 2003 and November 16, 2005. Control and case proxy interviews were done at the same rate throughout the data accumulation period. Interviewers returned to an address up to 3 times to get a response. When more than one proxy was available, a pre-specified priority order was used, with wives or partners being first choice. For validation purposes, we obtained proxy interviews from 2 informants living in the same household in a subset of 200 cases, and 200 controls interviewers did interviews in private to avoid contamination of responses. The questionnaire covered a range of characteristics, including alcohol consumption, smoking, and demographic variables. Most questions were derived from established and validated instruments. A systematic review of the validity of proxy informant data undertaken at the design stage noted that the average drinking frequency and usual number of drinks per occasion show high index proxy agreement, with classified into ordinal categories. A key conclusion was that the validity of proxy responses was improved if they were restricted to questions on behaviors that were directly observable, and we therefore adopted this approach. Information about several adverse alcohol-related behaviors was obtained. Zapoy is a Russian term used to describe a period of 2 or more days of continuous drunkenness when the person is withdrawn from normal social life. A single indicator of problem drinking was constructed on the basis of having 1 or more episodes of Zapoy in the past year, twice a year, or more occurrence of excessive drunkenness and hangover, or going to sleep at night clothes because of being drunk. โอเคหน้าต่อไป For all cases and controls, irrespective of whether or not an interview was done, we obtained information about ever having been registered at the cities of Nokolok Clinic, the main treatment facilities for alcohol problems. This information was abstracted from clinical records blind to case control status. Since 1999, percent of registration for men aged 25 to 54 years had an alcohol-related diagnosis. We obtained information about alcohol problems without servers and recall bias. Logistic regression was used to estimate the strength of association of factor with mortality, with all analysis done with the STATA version 9.1. In all models, age was included in the 6 5-year categories. Education, smoking, and marital status were treated as potential confounders and were introduced into models as a categorical variables. Oral consent was obtained from proxy informants. Ethical approval for the study was obtained from the committees of the Ashford Medical Academy and the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicines โอเคเดี๋ยวไปที่ result เดี๋ยวพี่ทำให้มันใหญ่ขึ้นนิดนึงได้อ่านสบายนะ Okay. Results. The proportion of the interview obtained from case proxies and control proxy was much the same. More cases that control lived alone, so no proxy was available, although refusals by proxies were more common for controls than for cases. Success in obtaining a proxy interview for cases varied by education and marital status, as derived from the death certificate. Equivalent information about the number of years in education and marital status for non-responding controls was not available.The percentage of cases in control registered with narcology clinic was the same irrespective of whether or not a proxy interview was obtained. Most proxy interviews were with wives or partners. 1,036 at 59% cases and 1,486 at 85% control, followed by mothers, 368 at 21% cases and 156 at 9% controls. Over informants were adult offspring, siblings, father, or other relatives.A strong positive association of mortality with beverage ethanol volume adjusted for education and smoking was seen for men reported to never or almost never drink non-beverage alcohols. However, for those who did drink non-beverage alcohols, there was no association with volumes of ethanols consumed.In men with full data for drinking behaviors, over half, 51% of those who died had drunk either non-beverage alcohol or were classed as problem drinkers with an adverse behaviors compared with 13% of controls. The mortality odds ratio OR for this group of hazardous drinkers relatives to men with either abstained or were beverage-only drinkers without adverse behaviors was 6.0, 5.0 to 7.3 adjusted for smoking and education. On the basis of these results, we estimate with Greenland's method that 43% of death in men aged 25 to 54 years in Ashevik might be attributable to hazardous drinking defined by non-beverage alcohol consumption or problem drinking or both. With an OR additionally adjusted for marital status, the percentage of attributable death falls very slightly to 41%. Okay. มานะครับต่อ307 of 1,750, 18% deaths were from causes explicitly implicating alcohol. Alcohol psychosis, alcoholic cardiomyopathy, alcoholic liver disease, and cirrhosis or acute alcohol poisoning.Non-beverage alcohol drinking in the past year, yes versus no, was very strongly associated with mortality from the aggregated of these directly alcohol-related causes with an OR of 25.5, range of 17.4 to 37.6 adjusted for volume of ethanol consumed from beer, wine, and spirits, education, and smoking.The equivalent adjusted OOR for mortality for the aggregated for all the other causes was less than this result of 5.3 from 4.1 to 6.9. The mortality OR for narcology registration versus non-registration was 5.1, range 4.1 to 6.3 on the basis of all 2,835 cases and 3,078 controls compared with 4.8, 3.6 to 6.2 range on the basis of those with interviews. Of the cases, in which a proxy interview was obtained, 118.7% could not be found in the population register sampling frame used to select controls. Excluding these cases, the mortality OR for non-beverage alcohols, yes or no, was 8.8, 7.2 to 10.8 range adjusted for age only. This OR is almost identical to that found without such exclusion. OR equal to 8.7 with range of 7.1 to 10.6. Alright, now we're going to go by the discussion แล้วนะฮะ So discussion. We have shown that mortality in working age men in a typical city in Russia is strongly associated with the hazardous pattern of alcohol consumption. In particular, we have identified drinking of non-beverage alcohol as a potentially major contributor to mortality. Frequencies of consumption of such beverage was strongly associated with all-cause mortality in a graded fashion and was statistically independent of the volume consumption of beverage alcohols. Mortality was also associated with a composite marker of a problem drinking independently of the non-beverage alcohol consumption and total volume of beverage ethanol consumed. However, there was a reduced but consistent increased risk of death with increasing total volume of ethanol consumed in men who did not drink non-beverage alcohol. The few epidemiological studies of alcohol and mortality in Russia undertaken over the past 20 years have the methodological limitations. The Novosibirsk cohort recruited people willing to participate in all medical examination, potentially selectively excluding heavy drinkers. Nevertheless, they reported that frequent heavy drinking increased mortality from the cardiovascular disease. A case control study of men aged 20 to 55 years in the United Republic established that periods of heavy drinking were associated with an increased risk of death from cardiovascular disease and external causes, but the choice of control was questionable. Only weak association between alcohols and mortality were seen in a study applying indirect demographic estimation to a 2002 cross-sectional survey in the selected Russian regions. This study depended on relatives' reports of drinking by family members who died up to 30 years previously. None of these studies used indicators of problem drinking such as frequent hangover, which has been advocated for the Russian context. Additionally, none has explicitly considered consumption of non-beverage alcohol. A particular strength of our study in this, it was a population base. We started with all death in men aged 25 to 54 years who were resident of the city, and in parallel control selected randomly from a register of the city population. Although we were not able to obtain proxy interview with all cases and controls, we noted that the association of mortality with narcolepsy registration for all men, irrespective of whether they were interviewed, was almost identical to the obtained with the subset of men for whom a proxy interview was obtained. This result suggests that the selection bias is unlikely to play much of a part in the explanation of our key finding with respect to non-beverage alcohol and problem drinking, which are both strongly related to the probability of narcolepsy registration. If a substantial part of the association of non-beverage alcohol drinking with mortality is not a result of design difficulties or selection bias, how can it be explained? Adjustment for two important confounders, smoking education leads to negligible attenuation of the associations. Pronounced effects of non-beverage alcohol drinking on mortality are seen even after further adjustment for marital status. However, treating marital status as a confounder might lead to overadjustment because marital status is partly determined by alcohol problems, and therefore probably carries information about the severity of alcohol problems that are not adequately captured by the question we ask about the alcohol itself. An unavoidable weakness of the study was the use of proxy report. Consistent with previous research, proxy reporting of very obvious features of behavior of the case or control, e.g., non-beverage alcohol consumption, seemed reliable. Conversely, total volume of ethanol from the beverage sources is less well reported than in non-beverage alcohol drinking, since accurate information is needed not only about frequency of the consumption, but also about usual amount of drunk on typical occasions. Nevertheless, total volume of ethanol is related to mortality, especially in men not drinking non-beverage alcohols. However, there is probably some residues confounding from ethanol volume consumed because of measurement error in this variable. Since all-cause mortality ORs associated with non-beverage alcohols are much larger than are those reported for ethanol volume, residual confounding is highly unlikely to account for much of this effect. What is the relevance of our results for Russian as a whole? Well, we have shown that cause-specific variation in strength of association of mortality with non-beverage alcohol drinking as a powerful indicator of hazardous alcohol consumption in sged nowadays are much the same as the pattern of mortality variation by cause seen during the first half of the 1990s in Russia as a whole. This trend accords with the contention that the factor of the sharp increase in mortality could be related not just to variation in general alcohol consumption, but in particular to the sort of hazardous alcohol consumption represented in Ashwood nowadays by drinking of non-beverage alcohol. However, on the basis of our study, we are now unable to generalize a quantitative estimate of mortality attributable to non-beverage alcohol or hazardous drinking in Ashwood to the whole of Russia. To estimate these deaths, we would need to have exposure information from a representative sample of the Russian population. In such a generalization would justify the 43% of mortality attributable to the non-beverage alcohol or hazardous drinking in Ashwood would translate to 170,000 excess deaths in Russia per year for men aged 25 to 54 years. What does this study add to what is already known? In the European subregion containing Russia, Rem, and colleagues have estimated that 27% of deaths in men aged 15 to 59 years in 2002 were attributable to alcohol. However, we have estimated that 43% of deaths in men aged 25 to 54 years in Ashwood were attributable to hazardous drinking alone. Additionally, we report much stronger association with alcohol than do the epidemiological studies. Most of these differences are probably explained by the fact that we quantify the effects of the hazardous patterns of alcohol drinking and mortality, especially consumption of the non-beverage alcohol, as well as factors such as heavy binge drinking exhibited by the episodic and extended periods of drunkenness, sepoy, and frequent hangover. Development of policy intervention to address this serious problem would need major shift in how alcohol is perceived in Russian life. Addressing the consumption of non-beverage alcohol might be a good starting point, and there could be lessons to be learned from Finland, where non-beverage alcohol were once a major problem. However, the focus on the non-beverage alcohol might only be effective in reducing alcohol-related harm and mortality if developed within a broader framework of policy and intervention aimed at reducing harmful pattern of ethanol consumption irrespective of sources. โอเคทันนะครับตรงนี้นี่คือ exam ครับไม่ต้องกลัวเดี๋ยวอันนี้พี่จะให้เราไปทำมันกันบ้านโอเคไหมโอเคแต่ว่าพี่ต้องอธิบายก่อนและนี่คือ exit exam ของ reading แน่นอนครับน้องจะต้องเข้าไปในมหาลัยโดยเฉพาะปี2ปี3นี่คือตัว final แล้วจบคอร์สจะต้องสามารถจัดการตรงนี้เพราะว่าไม่ว่าจะตอนช่วงปีสุดท้ายของการเรียนหมอในการทำ research ก็ดีหรือว่าน้องจะต้องต่อเรียน actual ว่าง่ายๆ anything that is related ปริญญาตรีปลายๆจนถึงโทคุณต้องอ่านอะไรอย่างนี้ได้สบายๆแล้วนึกภาพบอกปะตรงนี้นะครับตรงนี้เราจะต้องหา purpose ให้ได้ใน introduction เขาช่วยเลยล่ะแล้วก็หา factor เนาะ population decline อันนี้ยังอยู่ใน section introduction อยู่นะโอเคไหมครับแล้วก็ตรงนี้นะครับเราจะต้องดูใน method section น้องจะต้องเขียน study design ที่ clear ที่สุดนะ ในที่นี้ก็คือเขาใช้ methodology อะไรในการทำ study design subject คือใคร setting of subject คือเมืองไหนเป็นอย่างไร statistic ตรงนี้เนี่ยเขาใช้ statistic อะไรในการจัด data มาน้องต้องจัดให้ได้เลยว่ามี age range อะไรบ้างเข้าใจไหม classification ของ men นึกภาพออกไหม range เปอร์เซ็นต์ทุกอย่างคุณต้อง report มาได้หมดเก็ตปะ
เก็ตครับ
แล้วต่อไปนะครับตรงนี้ true false ง่ายมากอ่านดีๆโอเคส่วนข้อตรงนี้ใน discussion concluded study the association ว่า all death นี่นะครับผม working men กับ alcohol consumption โอเคไหมน้องต้องหา limitation ของ study 2 อย่างโอเค concerning alcohol mortality แล้วก็นะครับผมข้อที่3 strength นะต้องหา supporting ด้วยว่าทำไมตรงนี้เป็น strength เป็นข้อได้เปรียบข้อแข็งของการทำ study นี้แล้ว number 4 suggestion เขาแนะนำว่าอย่างไรตรงทิ้งท้ายนะครับที่ made by researchers ต้องอ่านดีๆด้วยเหมือนกันโอเคป่ะ
ครับ
นะครับอย่าทำผิดมาเลยนะพยายามทำให้ perfect อันนี้นะครับผมไปทำเป็น test นะฮะก็ไม่จับเวลาสักทีเดียวก็คือส่งพรุ่งนี้แล้วเดี๋ยวพรุ่งนี้เราจะฝึกในเรื่องของตัว medical vocabulary แล้วก็จบด้วย writing โอเคไหม
โอเคครับ
โอเคครับงั้นเดี๋ยวเราเจอคลาสพรุ่งนี้กันเนาะโอเค
พี่ครับไอ้แป๊บนึงครับ
ว่าไง
ข้อ3นี่มันต้องหาซัพพอร์ตด้วยใช่ไหมครับ
แน่นอนครับมันมีอยู่ในนั้นฮะฮะ
โอเคครับ
มันจะเปลี่ยน
มันต้องสรุปแบบไอ้นี้ป่ะครับ
ไม่ต้องอันนี้คือของจริงละ imagine ในห้องสอบเลยต้องตอบเลย unless ครูเขาสั่งเราอีกทีนึงว่าให้ทำ summary นึกภาพออกไหมนี่ไม่มี summary นี่ตอบอย่างเดียวเลยนะฮะโอเค
ครับ
โอเคครับงั้นเดี๋ยวเราอย่าลืมส่งอันนี้เป็น exit exam โอเคสวัสดีครับ